Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning, you fantastic people, wherever you are. Welcome to Chibi Reads Reddit. I'm your host, DoomedChibi99. Today's subreddit is r/entitled parents. So, sit back, get cozy, grab a drink, and let's read. Entitled father became so upset that I wasn't going to give him biological grandchildren that he married a mail-order bride partially in order to claim her grandchildren as his own? Huh? I'm going to go off on a limb here and say that entitled parents pressuring their children into giving them grandkids isn't exactly a novel concept on this sub, but I hope that you'll allow me to toss my own 2 cents into the pile. Ever since I was young, my father, divorced from my mother who has one child not with him, has always commented on how he can't wait to have grandkids. I am his only child, and none of his siblings either, for that matter, have any kids. So basically, I'm last in line on his side of the family. I never really thought too much about it, but as I grew out into adulthood, my father became much more interested in my relationship status, encouraging me into heterosexual relationships, including setting me up on dates without my permission, and getting upset whenever I entered into homosexual relationships. I'm bisexual. Of course, he always threw out the typical biphobic, okay, but once you're done experimenting, you'll settle down and have kids at some point, right? And I just kind of brushed it off, because it wasn't worth arguing with him over it. Or arguing with him over anything, for that matter. That being said, I had long thought about the idea of having biological children when I was younger, whether it would be through natural or artificial means, depending on the sex of who I settled down with. And I sometimes even found myself excited by the idea. Eventually, though, I settled on the idea that I had too many hereditary health issues that I didn't want to pass on to any potential biological children. Given that there are also plenty of kids in foster care who need warm, welcoming homes, I figured that I could look into adopt if I ever did end up wanting children of my own. Though it is questionable whether I'll ever reach that point or not. My father obviously wasn't happy with me coming to that conclusion, and he kept trying to convince me to have biological children even though I explicitly told him that I didn't want to do so. Anyways, a few years ago, I had a medically necessary procedure that made it 100% certain that I would never be able to have biological children. I did not tell my father, because I was well aware of how he would react if he found out that I had done such a thing. Whether it was not medically necessary, I considered the fact that I had essentially doomed my father's family line to die out with me, because I had never really been someone too focused on passing on my bloodline, or whatever. Around the same time as I had my procedure, my father entered into a relationship with a woman from the Philippines that he had been set up with by other Filipino women local to where we ourselves live. My father, of course, kept going on and on about his girlfriend's grandkids, and how whenever he went down to visit her in the Philippines, said grandkids would call him Grandpa. Ooh, this is sounding sus as all hell, man. Very sus. Long story short on that end, the Filipino woman in question immigrated to the United States to marry and live with my father, though it was far more of a bang-maid situation than it was remotely a loving marriage. The woman herself was incredibly sweet, however, and I loved calling her my stepmom and spending time with her. Just recently, a couple of years after she married my father, she ended up divorcing him and returning to the Philippines. As you might imagine, my father is not a good person, and I absolutely cannot blame anyone for wanting to get away from him. My father was, of course, very torn up about the whole situation, though he obviously never accepted any responsibility for the matter, always just blaming my stepmom, and came over to the house where me, my biological mother, and my stepfather lived together in order to complain about everything. During one of his rantings and ravings, he said the following: I mean, part of the reason that I married her was so that I could say that I at least had kind of had grandkids, since you won't give me any yet. I'm getting older, and I don't want to die without grandkids." To say that to me, my mom and my stepdad were shocked that he actually finally came out and said that it would be an understatement. Feeling extremely petty in the moment, I told him about my procedure and about how I would never be giving him any grandkids, and how he would inevitably be dying without them. The whole thing blew up into a massive argument, as you can imagine, that ultimately ended with my father getting kicked out of the house by my stepdad. Things have cooled down since then, but my father hasn't brought up the grandkids thing directly, though he loves to needle me indirectly about it. So yeah, there you go. I didn't want to have biological children, so my father married a mail-order bride partially in order to have grandkids that he could claim as his own, and then once divorced, blamed me for the fact that he was going to die without any grandkids. Honestly, if he hadn't been such a terrible husband to all of his wives, maybe he could have had another kid to give him grandchildren, but c'est la vie. Entitled mother assaults me and gets fired. So this happened just over a decade ago. I was around 17, working in the main mall in my town at a well-known athletic shoe store where everyone dresses like refs. Ooh, I think I know which one he's talking about. Or they're talking about, my bad. It was time for my lunch break, so after scarfing down some greasy food court meals, I decided to head back to the employee smoking area of the mall. A couple minutes after I sat down, a woman, around 30, her mother, around 55, and her child in the stroller, around 2, came and sat beside me with their lunch. I looked at them strange, thinking, of all the places around the mall, why here? Why with a child? Whatever, I guess. Not long after, one of them, I don't remember if it was the mother or grandmother, started yelling at me that I needed to leave the area because I'm smoking beside their child while they're eating. I replied, "This is the only area of the mall I'm allowed to smoke." They replied, "Then put it out, because you cannot be smoking beside my child." I replied, "Lady, this is the only area of the mall I can smoke during my break. I am not inside the food court. This isn't my problem." Maybe not the best thing I could have said, but whatever. I was young, and honestly, they deserved it. Keep in mind, this entire time, I am in uniform. Before I knew it, the old woman was literally flying at me. She started trying to punch me in the head, so I grabbed her arms and held her down. That's when the younger woman ran up and just started wailing on my head. I just sat there taking it. She was larger, but could not throw a punch to save her life for a few minutes. Then security came running out and separated us. No joke. These women started yelling and screaming about how I just attacked them and was blowing smoke in their baby's face. Huh? I told them that was bullcrap, and they had no idea who to believe, but were definitely more on their side. Thank God this older guy who worked at a mobile phone store around me saw everything go down. After everyone was just sitting there baffled, and obviously I lit up another cigarette. The man came up to me and let me know he saw everything, and that he would be going to security right away to stand up for me. He said how insane it was and offered some sympathy. Then I went back to my work, my face very red from being hit, but thankfully, no bruises. My boss asked me the flippity-doo-dah just happened, and I told her the whole story, but she literally didn't even believe me. The cops ended up being called in an hour later. Apparently, the women were trying to press charges against me. I was stunned. I told them who to talk to and to watch the freaking tapes. Thankfully, they did. Just before the end of the day, the manager of La Sanza comes into my store letting me know that the woman was her employee. She got fired for assaulting someone on shift. The mall also banned her for the same reason. The cops came into my store asking if I wanted to press charges. I told them she probably learned her lesson, but I'd let them know if I saw her again. Thankfully, I never did. My mom drugged me. When I was 19, my stepmom drugged me. We were at home and we were talking about smoking, and I talked about how I don't like it and how I've been trying to get my sisters and dad to quit. She said it's not as bad as I think, and then started pressuring me to smoke what I thought was a normal cigarette. They weren't, and I caved and smoked one puff, which was my first and last time. I couldn't breathe. I was coughing so hard, I started crying. She just laughed at me while I was crying and saying, I can't breathe. Eventually, the coughing died down and I sat away from her, and then everything started spinning. Oh no. It wouldn't stop, and when I tried to close my eyes, it made my stomach flip. For 5 hours, I laid on a recliner, staring at a wall, trying not to puke. And my mom was recording it and FaceTiming my dad, who was pissed. I was just laying on the chair, terrified. My dad came home and started yelling at her. He knows I hate smoking. And then he yelled at her that she knew that I don't like drugs, as my bio mom is a neglectful and mentally abusive drug addict. My sisters were also pissed, and my second eldest sister kicked her out at the bridal party for this, as she was getting married soon and didn't want her in the party to begin with. But knowing our shared history with bio mom and what stepmom did, she was angry, to say the least. I have a lot less trust in my stepmom now, after the stuff she did. What she does, I have a lot of stories I could share about her antics, and while some of you may say to cut her off, I can't. I have my reasons why, but I'm not comfortable sharing with them as it could reveal who I am. There really was no resolve to what she did here. She never said sorry and laughed at me during all of it. My grandparents don't know about it, and I don't want them to know. It would probably cure her of her existence, honestly. She never did it again, and I'm more firm on telling people no with this stuff because of that experience, and it scared the hell out of me. I don't know how anyone can do drugs. It's scary as hell. She thinks she's entitled to my respect, and she thinks she's entitled to be my mom no matter what she does. I don't know how to talk to her about how this affected me. If I try, she will yell at me like she always does, saying stuff like, well, I guess I'm a monster then, aren't I? Or, you're being dramatic. Or even, guess I'll divorce your dad and leave for your life forever if I'm so bad. I'm not mentally strong, so I caved a lot when it comes to my parents. I don't know what to do. It's been a while since this, but it still scares me about what happened. Edit. Seen a lot of comments on why my dad hasn't divorced her. I don't know, but it may have to do with my little brother. He's still a kid, and she would take him away from all of us if they do. At one point, they almost did divorce. She left for 5 months after my dad kicked her out for cheating for 4 years with his brother, who is now disowned in the family. But then my dad, for some reason I don't understand, forgave her. She moved back in, and everyone basically ignores that any of it happened, which bothers me. My mother has been shaming me since I got married and now is trying to marry out my minor daughters? I can't believe I've ever had to make a post about my mother, but here we are. My 45 female, mother 71 female, and we have a difficult relationship. My mother was an old school traditional wife. She was a homemaker, never did any work outside of the house, had far more kids than what I think is healthy, 7 girls and 6 boys. She originally was from Guatemala and came to the US when she was 14. She married my father here, had her family here, and tried to make sure myself and my siblings had old school values. Something she really failed at. Most of my siblings are as far from my mother as humanly possible. 2 of them sadly passed away. I'm the only one that stayed near to take care of my parents, and since my dad died, I've taken my mother's bills so she can live easy. She's always been a dramatic headache, especially when it came to my marriage. She babied my husband, always took his side. I only wanted 1 kid, but my husband wanted as many as biologically possible. He had told me he also only wanted one when we talked about marriage. My mother helped him mess with my birth control, so I got pregnant with my youngest. I don't regret my youngest daughter, but after she was born, I secretly had my tubes tied. My mother is always berating me for being faulty, since I only had 2 children. That's not counting how she berated me for marrying old. I married at 22. She married at 16. My husband was 49 when he died in a car crash recently. We shared 2 daughters, 14 and 16. He was also having an affair with a girl since 2020. The girl was 24 when she died. Together they had twin boys early this year who thankfully survived the crash. My daughters found out about the affair when their father took them to the hospital to first meet their babies and told the girls to keep it secret from me. They didn't, and my husband became abusive towards them and myself. We were in the divorce process when he died. When my husband's affair came out, my mother blamed me? She said it was because I was a working woman that didn't please her husband, that I didn't give him enough children, that I wasn't pretty anymore. I'm not going to say I'm super attractive, but I think I look good for my age. I've kept my weight well enough, and I look relatively young for my actual age. But no. According to my dear mother, I wasn't good enough for my husband, who needed a girl closer in age to our daughters than to him. She also was on the group of people angry at me when I refused to adopt my husband's affair children. Her newest crazy is she's trying to find husbands for my daughters, mainly focused on my eldest. This crazy plan started this week when my eldest came out to us. I had an idea, and I'm happy that she felt comfortable enough in this massive mess we're in to still tell me and her sister. My daughter also decided to tell my mother about it. My mother just ended the call, then called to scream at me how confused and sick my daughter is. She linked me in conversion camps, psychologists that claim homosexuality is a sickness. Wackos, in my opinion. Political articles, etc. She even wanted to see about doing an exorcism? I told her to stop it or she would be in no contact with my in-laws. Delulu! She stopped for literally 24 hours. Next thing I get is a Facebook message from a man in his mid-20s asking if it was true that I was looking to marry out my 16-year-old daughter. I told him he was sick and blocked him. I got 6 more through the night. Then my mother called saying she found husband prospects for my girls, my high school age girls. Angry has been an understatement. She even gave some of these men my daughter's cell phone numbers. We're all getting new phone numbers tomorrow, and I had the girls put their social media set to private. I don't know what part of the brain is broken in my mother's brain. I had the girls block their grandma and everything, and I'm stopping payments to any of my mother's needs. I know I need to call the cops, but I just never thought I would need to call the cops my own mother. It's been only 2 weeks since I had to cut my in-laws out. I'm just exhausted. And please do not think this is a normal Hispanic thing. It's not. My aunts are amazing women, most of them also homemakers. They are actually on my side of cutting off my mother and calling the cops. They even suggested for my daughters and I to move closer to them in another state. This is just my mother being insane. Small update. We went to the police today and they took all the information I had. The officer we spoke to was incredible and immediately helped my lawyer with all that was needed for a temporary restraining order. We'll be filing it this week and hopefully get it within the month. After, we'll focus on a permanent restraining order. This is on my mother and any third parties on her behalf. The officer was also kind enough to check in on us at our house at least once a day. School has also been notified of the situation, and one of my brothers is going to come live with me and my daughters until I decide if, where, or when we move. I can't just up and pack everything since I still have a job and my girls are in the middle of school. For now, we're safe, and my girls have new phone numbers. And then OP posted an actual update. So, some good news came out of today regarding my mother. As of November 2024, she will be on her own monetarily. There's also an investigation on her regarding what she tried to do to my daughters, and a very old investigation reopened about a family member, a matter I can't really speak on for the time being. Because of the charges on my mother, we might get an expedite on that restraining order since there's minors involved. So, fingers crossed. The restraining order will also keep some others from contacting me, mainly in-laws. On other news, after talking to my daughters, the three of us agree we don't really like our house anymore. It makes me a bit sad because it was my childhood home and a gift from my dad. But the reality is, there's too much baggage. I look at some places and it feels like the ghost of my husband's infidelity is everywhere. My girls don't like that we're so close to their grandparents, and my brother, who's moved in with us, has also been very blunt about the fact that the house is just not worth the stress. So, as painful as it is, I'm planning to do some repairs and either sell or rent it out. It's a big house, 9 bedrooms. So far, more space than we ever need. I'll be happy with half so that my girls can have their own room and I can have an office. My brother will also be living with us until after we move. Not sure if it's a forever situation, but he's a good support for my eldest daughter when it comes to the LGBTQ plus matters. I have to admit, I know the bare facts. While my brother is gay and came out almost 30 years ago, he's been a fount of knowledge and advice and resources and given her advice, especially after my mother's stunt. My youngest has also started to do better. She's back to talking as usual and seems less scared about going out. She's been very excited about looking for a new house. She wants the perfect yard. So, we'll see what we can find. My job offered a transfer out of state. Also an internal transfer, but that one is more likely a no for me. So, a new beginning will do us good. That's all I've got. Not much in actual updates, as much as setting my mind on some decisions after reading advice here and talking it through with people in my life. As of November, I'm officially refusing to acknowledge my mother. As far as I know, my parents were gone after my father died. I'm gonna keep an eye up for any updates because I'm kind of invested. I want to see this mother get justice. Looks like we've reached the end of today's video. But fret not, I'll be back tomorrow with more Reddit stories just for you. Want to get notified of the next video? Tap that bell icon. Want to subscribe? Tap the button. It's completely free. Anyways, that's it for today's video. Thank you for watching, and until next time, catch you later, my Chibi Dominators.